How many rides can you get with Genie Plus? On their official website, Disney World says you can expect to get on 2 to 3 rides with your Genie Plus purchase. Like Figment in a skunk suit, that stinks. And honestly, if you know what you're doing, that's totally not the case. You can get on way more rides than that. Unfortunately, Genie Plus is the most complicated skip-the-line system out there, and as I've said many times, you can do Genie wrong, throwing away precious time and money on your vacation. Nobody wants that. Let's find out how to do Genie Plus the right way. Hi, I'm James from Guide to WDW. So, my friends and family all know me as the Disney guy, and most of the time they just quietly mock me behind my back, until suddenly they're planning their own vacation and need to figure out how this whole Genie thing works. Ho ho ho, how the tables have turned. Who's the weird one now? Well, it's still me, because guess who has a prepared TED Talk about the complexities of Genie? This guy. In this video, I'm taking all the best advice I give to my friends and family for when they visit Disney World and giving it to you, my newest friend. Or family member? Grandpa, is that you? This is a Genie Plus Masterclass, where I'll take you from Street Rat to Prince Ali. You'll learn the most important things to know about Genie Plus, discover hidden tips like how one of the most pointless features in the Disney World app can actually be your secret weapon, and find out the strategy that consistently gets my family Genie Plus lineups that look like this. That's a real screenshot. In this video, I'm sharing 25 tips broken into 3 sections. First, learn the Genie Plus basics. This is a great place to start if you've never used Genie Plus before, but even if you have, you may learn a thing or two here. Then level up Genie Plus. These are the tips and secrets that help you maximize your Genie Plus purchase. And finally, advanced strategies that will help you harness phenomenal cosmic power and get on the most rides possible. This is my biggest and most helpful video yet, so let's dive in. Learn the Genie Plus basics. These 7 tips explain how Genie Plus works and clarify some of the most common points of confusion. 1. A simple explanation of Genie Plus. One of the biggest digs against Genie Plus is that it's complicated. So let's simplify things. If you buy Genie Plus for that day, you get access to the Lightning Lane at over 50 attractions, including rides, meet and greets, and shows. The Lightning Lane has a dramatically shorter wait than the regular line. If you've heard of FastPass, it's the exact same idea, but this one costs money. But Genie Plus is not just a golden ticket to skip the lines. What you're buying is the ability to make reservations for the Lightning Lane that give you 1-hour return windows. When it's time for your reservation, go to the attraction, look for the Lightning Lane sign, and scan in to get on the ride. 2. Understand the limits of Genie Plus. Where things get tricky is that Genie Plus has some hard limits. The total number of Lightning Lane reservations each ride has each day is limited, and they're first come first served, so the popular rides do run out of Lightning Lanes. Your ability to make reservations is also limited. You can make 1 reservation at a time, and either after you've used that reservation or some time has passed, you can make another reservation. And you can keep doing that until rides are out of reservations for the day or the park has closed. We'll get into the specific details of how that works later in the video. Another big limitation, you can only get a Lightning Lane for each ride once per person per day. No double dipping. 3. The cost of Genie Plus changes daily. This is one of the biggest changes that Disney has made for Genie Plus since it was introduced. When it debuted, it was $15 per person per day, and it always included all 4 parks. Neither of those is true anymore. The first big change is that Disney introduced demand-based pricing, so it's more expensive on busy days and holidays and cheaper during the off-season. Then Disney added per-park pricing for Genie Plus, where each park has a different price, with Magic Kingdom and multiple parks being the most expensive, followed by Hollywood Studios, and then Animal Kingdom and Epcot. So the price can range from this on a slow day to this on a peak day. Disney doesn't pre-announce what the price will be, but ThrillData.com has a really good archive of past pricing. So if you're curious on what to budget, check out their site and see what Disney was charging last year around the same time. But be prepared for a bit of a price hike. 4. You don't have to buy Genie Plus every day of your trip. While this has already changed and probably will change again in the future, right now Genie Plus at Disney World must be a same-day purchase. So I would only recommend buying Genie Plus on days where getting on a lot of rides is your main priority. Say you have a day where you're doing a really long meal like Ohana, or going to a premium party where Genie Plus doesn't work. Consider skipping the Genie purchase that day. That's my personal philosophy about it. On more chill days where I spend only half a day in the park, I usually skip Genie Plus and save that money. And if I have a day where I'm going to Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, or park hopping, and getting on as many rides as possible is my goal, I'll buy Genie Plus. And when I do buy Genie Plus, I always make sure to do this next tip, because it's crucial for maximizing the number of rides I get on, and it gives me the best shot at getting the lightning lanes that will save me the most amount of time. That's 5. Always buy Genie Plus early in the day. Don't wait to buy Genie Plus once you're in the park. That's a huge mistake. I've gotten comments from people who said that they bought Genie Plus at 11 a.m. and were surprised that many of the best rides were already out of lightning lanes. At that point, most other guests with Genie Plus have had at least 2 chances at getting the most popular rides. If you're waiting until you're in the park to buy Genie Plus, you're at a huge disadvantage. You can purchase Genie Plus on the day of, starting at 12:01 a.m. Usually I'm in bed by then, but I always make sure that I buy Genie Plus before 7 a.m. Because you can make your first lightning lane reservation at 7, and Genie Plus can sell out on the busiest days, usually spring break and the holidays. Typically that happens by 10 or 11 a.m. My advice is to wake up at 6:45 and buy it. As far as I can recall, it's never sold out that early in the busy season, but no matter when you're going, you'll be set up for success. What will also set you up for success is to clear up what I think is the most confusing part of this whole system for newcomers. 6. Understanding the difference between Genie Plus and individual lightning lane. This is one of the most common things that trip people up about lightning lane. There's too many different names and systems that are all frustratingly similar. There's Genie, and there's also Genie Plus. And there's individual lightning lane, which is also sometimes called a la carte lightning lane, but that's different than Genie Plus lightning lane. The naming conventions are seriously bad. So let's clear up some of the confusion. The lightning lane is just the name for the shorter line. And there's actually 2 different ways to access the lightning lane depending on the ride. Genie Plus, which we've covered. You pay 1 daily fee to be able to make reservations at over 50 attractions. And individual lightning lane. You pay per ride to guarantee a reservation for the lightning lane, and this is only available at the 5 most popular rides. The most important thing to remember is that Genie Plus and individual lightning lane are 2 separate systems. They have separate lineups of rides, and there's no overlap. Any reservation you make with individual lightning lane won't affect your ability to make Genie Plus lightning lanes, and vice versa. And you don't need to buy Genie Plus in order to buy individual lightning lane. Every now and then, Disney will take a ride that was individual lightning lane and change it into a Genie Plus ride. This has happened with Space Mountain, Frozen, Ratatouille, and Expedition Everest. Now, to make this even more confusing, some of the rules work differently between individual lightning lane and Genie Plus. Like, you can only buy 2 individual lightning lane reservations per person per day. I'll point out more important distinctions as they come up. Before we get to our level up tips, let's end these basics on a high note by covering some of the cool perks that come included with Genie Plus. Like AR photo filters, which I found fun to use for 5 minutes in line and then forgot that they exist. Genie Plus also includes Ride Photo Pass, so you can download pictures and videos for rides you go on, like Tron and Tower of Terror. This is an awesome perk and really adds to the value of Genie Plus. But the best perk of all is subscribing to Guide to WDW to see even more Disney World videos. Wait a minute. You don't need to buy Genie Plus for that. We're keeping things like FastPass here because that's completely free. Okay, time to level up Genie Plus. These are the tips that will get you ahead of 90% of the other guests, and they're in order of when you'll need to use them, from things to do to get ready to make lightning lanes, to what to do once you're in the park. The right way to use the useless Disney Genie system. Up until this point, we've been talking about Genie Plus, but there's another part of the Disney World app just called Genie, no plus. It's an algorithm that will give you suggestions on what to do in the park. Just fill out a simple questionnaire about what types of experiences you're interested in, and then let Genie do the work of planning your magical day. Except don't do that. This direct-to-VHS sequel Genie gives terrible advice. If you closed your eyes and randomly pointed on a map of Disney World, you'd probably do just as good as Genie. Our next ride is the middle of World Showcase Lagoon. Okay kids, get out your snorkels. So Genie No Plus is useless, except for one way. By default, Attractions on the page where you make lightning lanes are listed in alphabetical order, but Genie will put any attractions that you selected during that questionnaire at the top of this list. So before it's time to make your first lightning lanes of the day, go to the menu, tap Today's Plans, and under Start Here to Plan Your Day, tap Get Started Now, and follow the prompts. Just don't worry about giving the algorithm a full picture of your interests. During the questionnaire, only mark your biggest lightning lane priorities. This will put them at the top of the list, making them much easier to find when you try to make Genie Plus reservations. Which is crucial because sometimes seconds can make the difference between snagging that 9 a.m. Slinky Dog Dash or saving exactly 0 minutes on Muppet Vision 3D. But how do you give yourself the best chance at rides like Slinky and Ratatouille that sell out quickly? 9. How to get lightning lanes as early as possible. As I mentioned earlier, Genie Plus lightning lane reservations open at 7 a.m. This is for all guests. If you're staying at a Disney resort, staying off property, if you have a regular ticket, a military ticket, an annual pass, it doesn't matter. All guests can start making Genie Plus reservations exactly at 7 a.m. This is a place where people get easily confused because the rules for individual lightning lane are different than Genie Plus. For individual lightning lane, only guests staying at Disney resorts and eligible third-party hotels can purchase reservations starting at 7 a.m. For all other guests, they can make individual lightning lane purchases once the park opens. Okay, back to Genie Plus. Here's how to get a Genie Plus reservation as fast as possible at 7 a.m. A tip I've gotten from viewers about virtual queue is to use a world clock. For that, I still prefer my rapid refresh method that I detail in my virtual queue video, but the world clock method works great for your first lightning lane of the day. You'll just need 2 different devices for this. One with your Disney World app on it, and one where you go to time.gov or another world clock online. On the world clock, pay attention to Eastern Time, where Orlando is. In the Disney World app, go to the menu in the bottom right, tap Rides, Shows, and Lightning Lane Entry. This brings you to the tip board, where you interact with Genie Plus and make lightning lanes. You can also get to the tip board by tapping the plus button in the bottom middle, then tapping View My Genie Day and Tip Board. The tip board only shows one park at a time, defaulting to Magic Kingdom. But I want to go to Epcot today, so let's change the park by tapping Change Park at the top, and then tapping on the park I want from the menu at the bottom. This is super handy for park hopping. Before 7 a.m., the LL Genie Plus box will be grayed out, and say it's available at 7 a.m. This is what you'll tap to book your lightning lane. Right as the clock is about to turn 7 a.m., like 1 to 3 seconds before, on the Disney World app, pull the tipboard screen to refresh. If you still see a grayed out box, keep pulling to refresh. If lightning lanes have opened up, you'll see the LL Genie Plus box say Book Experience. Tap that as fast as possible. Confirm your party and book it. Don't be worried if the time slot isn't perfect. I'll show you how to modify the reservation later. Just tap as fast as you can to book your first lightning lane. But wait, Genie Plus becomes available at 7 a.m. So does individual lightning lane and virtual queue. How the heck are you supposed to handle all that? 10. Divide and conquer. If you have multiple people in your traveling party that feel comfortable using the My Disney Experience app, give everyone a different job. One person focuses on Genie Plus, one person focuses on individual lightning lane, and one person focuses on virtual queue. Just make sure you're all on the same page about what rides to prioritize, and that you have all your accounts linked in the Disney World app. If you don't have a small army to book things and you're handling this solo, don't stress. It can feel overwhelming, but just create an order of operations, depending on which park you're visiting and what Genie Plus strategy you're using. On days where I really need all 3, I'll do virtual queue, then Genie Plus, then individual lightning lane. But there are cases where I wouldn't do that. Like if I'm going to Hollywood Studios and I want to get as early a slot for Slinky Dog as possible, Genie Plus first all the way. Then maybe I'd buy individual lightning lane for Rise of the Resistance and only bother with the virtual queue at 1 p.m. if I park hop to Magic Kingdom or Epcot. Going to Animal Kingdom? Prioritize the individual lightning lane for Avatar and maybe not even get Genie Plus that day. It really depends on your plans and priorities. Just come up with a game plan before 7 a.m. depending on which parks you're visiting and what you want to do that day. A quick bonus tip to avoid a problem I've personally run into multiple times: before 7 a.m., make sure your hotel reservation is still linked to your My Disney Experience account for individual lightning lane. I don't think this is a problem if you're staying at an official Disney resort, but if you're staying at a third-party hotel that gets that 7 a.m. individual Lightning Lane perk, just double check that your resort reservation is still linked to your Disney account at the start of your trip. I've had this happen both at the Swan and the Swan Reserve where everything is linked, but then sometimes after checking in, my resort reservation disappears from the Disney World app. This made it so that I couldn't buy individual Lightning Lane right at 7 a.m. All I had to do was put the confirmation number for my resort reservation back in the app to relink it, and it was all fine, but this did mean I wasted several minutes of my morning on a support chat to figure out the problem. Here's one last tip about getting that first Lightning Lane of the day. 12. Make sure you have a good internet connection. Having a fast internet connection can really help make sure that you have the best chance of getting an in-demand Lightning Lane. If it takes 10 to 15 seconds for your device to connect, that's time that thousands of other guests have a chance to get those precious Lightning Lanes. I've been giving this tip for years, since the virtual queue debuted at Rise of the Resistance. It's always good to check what gives you the best internet speed. Speedtest.net is great for this, but Google also has a speed test if you just Google internet speed test. Depending on your hotel situation, the in-room Wi-Fi might be great, but typically cellular is faster for me, so I turn off Wi-Fi. If your room is in a dead zone, you may need to go find a good connection somewhere else. Speed is less of a concern for making Lightning Lanes once you're in the park, but it helps. I usually avoid Disney World's Wi-Fi altogether and use my cellular connection. Okay, now we've gotten our first Genie Plus reservation. When can we get our next one? This is probably the most important concept to understand in this entire video. 13. The 120-minute rule, also called the 2-hour rule. With Genie Plus, when you make a Lightning Lane reservation, you are not able to make another reservation until one of three things happens. You scan in to redeem that reservation, 2 hours have passed from when you booked the reservation, or the reservation is canceled or expires. Whichever of these three comes first. Most of the time you only need to worry about the first two, scanning in or 2 hours has passed. The best way to really explain this is to take you through an imagined scenario in the park. Let's say at 12 o'clock you make a Lightning Lane reservation for Pirates of the Caribbean at 12:30. You can make another Lightning Lane reservation as soon as you scan into the line to redeem that reservation, which could be anywhere from 12:30 to 1:30. Let's say you're punctual and you scan into Pirates right at 12:30, and while in line you reserve a Peter Pan's Flight Lightning Lane for 6 p.m. That is further than 2 hours out, so you can't make another Lightning Lane until 2:30 p.m. So at 2:30 you grab a Haunted Mansion Lightning Lane for 3:30. When can you make your next Lightning Lane? Do you need to wait another 2 hours because Peter Pan is still more than 120 minutes out? No. You've already waited the 2 hours for that reservation. And the 120-minute rule only applies to the last reservation you made, which is Haunted Mansion. You can make a new Lightning Lane as soon as you scan into Haunted Mansion at 3:30. Here's a really important quirk. While all Lightning Lane reservations open at 7 a.m., the 120-minute rule doesn't kick in until the park opens. So let's say that you're going to Epcot, which opens for the day at 8:30. And at 7 a.m. you get a Lightning Lane for Ratatouille at 1 p.m., which is more than 2 hours out. When can you make your next Lightning Lane? Not at 9 a.m. because the counter for the 120-minute rule doesn't start up until the park opens. In this scenario, you'll be able to make your second Lightning Lane of the day at 10:30, which is 2 hours after park opening. The next tip is another reason to pay attention to the park opening time. 2 hours after park opening is a really important time for Genie Plus, especially at Epcot and Hollywood Studios. If you're going for the most in-demand Lightning Lanes of the day first, more often than not, you'll have a return window more than 2 hours later than park opening. You should really make it a point to be ready to book your next Lightning Lane right at that 2-hour mark. Let's go back to that Epcot scenario. You booked your Remy reservation at 7 a.m. and the park opens at 8:30. And you really want to get frozen. So you keep checking the app once you're in the park, and the return times look good, they're just slowly creeping up. You're not worried. But then 10:30 rolls around and suddenly Frozen is sold out for the day. That's because you're in a similar boat as a lot of other guests. Most of the Epcot guests who booked Remy or Test Track at 7 a.m. are now able to book their second Lightning Lane of the day, and they go for the next most popular option. This is a real problem at Epcot, where those 3 Lightning Lanes sell out much faster than the rest. It's less pronounced at Hollywood Studios, and it's not as much a problem at the other 2 parks. For the second Lightning Lane of the day at Epcot in the studios, I'd recommend making sure you're in the app right before the 2-hour mark and use the world clock if you can. Knowing this time can also come to play when it comes to more advanced strategies like Genie stacking. I'll get into that later. Now, here are a few quick tips for making more Lightning Lanes for the rest of your day. 15. Your reservations can overlap. With Genie Plus, you can make reservations that overlap with other Genie Plus reservations, with individual Lightning Lane, with virtual queue, or with dining reservations. The app might warn you about overlapping plans, but usually this isn't an issue, especially if you book rides that are close together. Just keep it in mind if you're booking things that are across the park from each other or in the middle of a long dining reservation. 16. Toggle Disney Genie Plus rides. A great quality of life feature in the app is this new toggle in the tipboard view. Show only Disney Genie Plus Lightning Lanes. Turn it on and use the tipboard exclusively for Genie Plus. If you want to check wait times for the other rides, toggle this off or go to the map. 17. Refresh, refresh, refresh. If you want a ride but you don't see availability or time you want, just keep checking. Go to the tipboard and pull to refresh, and keep refreshing until something pops up. Other guests are constantly changing their reservations, and I've read that Disney releases Lightning Lanes throughout the day, although I personally haven't confirmed that. But what I have experienced is that 1 second a ride will show that it's sold out, and then the next it will pop up with a great time, and then it will sell out again. So refresh often and be quick. Try not to do this obsessively, but it's a good thing to do while you're waiting in line. 18. A faster way to refresh. So here's a really useful tip that's kind of hidden. I didn't even know about it until I stumbled upon it while researching this video. Typically, if you refresh the tipboard screen, it will stay at the top of the list. That's not a huge issue for the attractions that you favorited that will be at the top anyway, but let's say you're trying to get a ride that you didn't put as one of your biggest priorities, like Winnie the Pooh, which is pretty far down in the list. Scroll down to the attraction, tap on it to see the attraction screen. Go back to the tipboard. Now tap at the top of the screen to quickly go back to the top and pull to refresh. The app will refresh and put you back down the list at the attraction you were just looking at, and it will keep working through multiple refreshes. Tap on the top, pull to refresh, and repeat until you get a time slot you want. If you want to refresh for a different ride, just tap on that one and do the same thing. 19. Use the modify feature. For certain scenarios, using the modify feature will work even better than refreshing the tipboard, especially for those really hard to get Lightning Lanes. This feature is really useful and crucial for stacking your reservations. So let's say you get a Slinky Dog reservation, but it's for the evening and you're going to park hop to Epcot for a dinner reservation. What do? First, find the reservation you want to modify. You can find this at the tipboard, your My Day tab, or the home screen of the app. Your upcoming plans are everywhere. Tap on the reservation. This will bring up a screen with your reservation details. Tap Modify. You can also get to the Modify screen by tapping the 3-dot icon and then tapping Modify at the menu that pops up from the bottom. You can use this to quickly refresh and check if there are any new times for that ride. If you don't see a time that you like, just refresh again. The attraction that you have booked will be at the top by default. To book the new time, tap the Change to this time box. It's going to be easier to change to a later reservation than an earlier one, since Genie Plus only shows you the soonest available time, but getting an early time can happen. If changing the time is just a preference and not a requirement, you can always just check the screen. You aren't forced to actually change your reservation. You can also use it to choose a different ride without having to cancel your reservation first. 20. Your smartwatch is your friend. Here's a simple one. The app will tell you when you're eligible to make a new reservation on the tipboard screen, but it won't send you an alert. And it's easy to get caught up with everything else at Disney World and forget to make a Lightning Lane as soon as you possibly can. So I like to set a timer on my Apple Watch, because it will silently tap my wrist and not distract the other guests. Of course, you can achieve this with a phone and an alarm that's set to only vibrate, but even then, I still prefer a smartwatch because the vibration is much quieter. 21. The return window is secretly longer than you think. Here's a rule that has been the case since the days of FastPass. You can show up early or late for your Lightning Lane reservation, both Genie Plus and individual Lightning Lane. Disney doesn't overtly advertise this, so this is a case where it's good to be in the know. You can show up to 5 minutes early or 15 minutes late to your reservation, and the system will let you in. You don't even need to say anything to the cast member with an excuse about being early or late, you can just scan in. So the return window for Lightning Lane is actually an hour and 20 minutes. This also applies to the virtual queue. Advanced strategies to become a master. Okay, now you have the techniques down, let's put them into play with some strategies. I'm going to share 3 different strategies, and you can pick and choose which ones fit your style best. The first one is really popular, and it's how my sister's family crushes Hollywood studios every single time they visit. 22. The Genie stacking strategy. The basic idea is that you want to pick lightning lanes that are later in the day, and stack them on top of or next to each other. So you get a stretch where you can use your lightning lanes back to back to back in the afternoon when lines are longest anyway. This works really well if you're going to park hop to Hollywood Studios or Magic Kingdom, or if you want a relaxing morning at your resort and you're going into the park later. You can just lounge by the pool and grab lightning lanes. Here's how to pull this strategy off. Get your first lightning lane at 7 a.m. To get the timing for the afternoon, just wait a little bit for the lightning lane times to slip back until the afternoon, or grab the earliest available and use the modify feature to change the time later. I usually use modify. Then, at 2 hours after park opening, grab your second lightning lane. Depending on what ride you're trying to get, you might need to refresh a little bit before you find a time that works for you. And once again, modify helps a lot. Repeat 2 hours later, and by 12 or 1, you should have an afternoon with 3 big lightning lanes booked. Bonus points if you can get attractions that are close by and overlap their reservations. Once you're in the park and start redeeming these, you can pick up some of the easier to get lightning lanes so you can have an afternoon and evening where you go on a ton of rides. The downside to Genie stacking is that Genie Plus only lets you get the soonest available time. So in order to line up the right timing, you have to refresh quite a bit in the tip board or the modified lightning lane function screen. It's a lot of setup at first for a big payoff later. 23. The first available strategy. This strategy is basically what it sounds like. You just pick whatever ride has the soonest available return window. The advantage of this is that you're getting ahead of the 120-minute rule, so you can get a lot of lightning lanes this way. Make a reservation, then use it and make another reservation. Rinse and repeat. This strategy does have a few flaws. 1. If you do this, you'll probably walk a lot more as you ping-pong back and forth across the park. 2. You'll probably miss out on the most in-demand lightning lanes, which also usually save you the most time. You might not be saving that much time compared to the regular standby line with lightning lanes that are immediately available. And 3, this really only works well at Magic Kingdom, where there are a lot more Genie Plus rides, and even the big lightning lanes sell out much later in the day than other parks. You can make it work at Hollywood Studios if you don't need Slinky Dog. So this isn't my favorite strategy, but it works if you go to the parks a lot and you're feeling indecisive. What's my recommended method? Something I call Guide to WDW's Genie Clustering Strategy, which is kind of a hybrid of stacking and picking the soonest available with the goal of minimizing backtracking. To do this, look at all the Genie Plus attractions that are in an area. This is what I call Genie clusters, just rides that are close to each other. You pick the rides that you're most interested in or that have the longest lines and make those your tent poles. Once you make that lightning lane, then try to stack any other rides that are nearby and the next priority down. Once you're in the area, when you redeem these lightning lanes, start to book the lower priority rides that have almost immediate return times. These are the might as well rides. I'll show you what I mean. At Magic Kingdom, I see Tomorrowland and the right side of Fantasyland as a Genie cluster. So my biggest priority there is Space Mountain, and my second priority is Buzz Lightyear. Depending on the timing, I'd get Space Mountain and either try to stack Buzz or more likely get the Buzz lightning lane as soon as I scan into Space Mountain. Then once I scan into Buzz, I'll start sweeping up the really low priority lightning lanes that should have almost immediate return times. Monsters Inc., Tomorrowland Speedway, Mad Tea Party, Dumbo, and Barnstormer. Honestly, I won't go on all of these, but you get the idea. It gives you a sprint of a lot of rides in a row. Once I go on all the rides in a cluster, I move on, making a new cluster around tentpoles like Peter Pan's Flight, Haunted Mansion, Big Thunder, or Jungle Cruise. Like all things with Genie Plus, this works best at Magic Kingdom. And sometimes the timing with the 120-minute rule will mean that you can't quite sweep up all the low priority rides. But what I really like about this strategy is that it allows for some flexibility based on what's available, and you aren't running yourself ragged chasing lightning lanes back and forth across the park. I'd also make sure that I prioritize those tentpole rides and skip a few of those lower priority rides or save them for later in the day. But finally, the most important thing to understand for any Genie Plus strategy is 25. Figure out your priority list of lightning lanes. Making a priority list will help you know exactly which rides to pick first and second, when to pick one ride over another, and which rides are actually worth running across the park for, no matter what strategy you're picking. This needs to be a combination of the rides you're interested in, the rides that have the longest lines, so Lightning Lane will actually save you time, and the lightning lanes that sell out the fastest, because generally you'll want to try to get those first. Well, how do you do that? I have your back. These are all things I'm covering in my series of Lightning Lane videos. I've done the research on average wait time and Lightning Lane sellout time so you don't have to. I already have videos on my channel on the hardest to get lightning lanes and the lightning lanes that will save you the most and least amount of time. And I'm working on park by park videos that will share full priority lists plus specific strategies for stacking and clustering. So you can get started by watching this video here. And get subscribed so you don't miss more Disney World tips and advice for a more magical vacation. Thanks for attending my TED Talk. This has been James from Guide to WDW. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon.